silence isn't empty. It's waiting, especially in this house. Since Eleanor left us, everyone told me grief would be a loud, chaotic storm. They mentioned the crying, the phone calls, the endless stream of casseroles on the doorstep, but no one, not a single person, ever mentioned the silence that settles in afterwards. It's a silence so dense, so absolute. It feels like it absorbs every sound, every memory, every last scrap of light. It smothers everything, except for that one sound. It started exactly 7 nights ago. The funeral had been an agonizing blur of black suits and whispered condolences. The dirt was still fresh on her favorite rose bushes in the garden, a raw wound in the earth. I came home to this cavernous, empty house, and for the first time, I felt the true weight of her absence. That night, I finally drifted into a shallow, restless sleep, only to be jolted awake. The clock on the nightstand glowed, 3:07 a.m. And then I heard it, the first knock. It wasn't a hesitant tap, not the sound of a branch brushing against the wood. It was a deliberate, demanding impact. Thud, thud, thud. My blood ran cold. My heart seized in my chest. I knew that pattern. It was her signature knock, that impatient, slightly aggressive rhythm she used whenever she delocked herself out after a late shift at the hospital, the same rhythm she'd use when she was juggling too many grocery bags and needed me to move, and move fast. It was Eleanor's knock. Impossible. Utterly, terribly impossible. I stumbled out of bed, my mind racing to find a rational explanation. It's the house settling, I told myself. It's an old house. The wood groans and shifts, or maybe it was just the wind, playing cruel tricks on the old doorframe. But the wind doesn't knock in a perfect set of 4. The wind doesn't have a signature rhythm. The wind doesn't always stop, with perfect, agonizing timing, the exact second before I can get my eye to the peephole. I'd fling the door open to find nothing but the empty, moonlit street and the cold night air rushing in to mock me. The second night was the same. 3:07 a.m. Thud, 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 thud. I stayed in bed this time, pulling the covers over my head, convinced it was a dream, a hallucination born of sleep, deprivation, and sorrow. But the sound was too real, too solid. It vibrated through the floorboards, a physical presence in the room. By the third night, I was waiting for it. I sat in the dark living room, a half-empty glass of whiskey in my trembling hand, my eyes fixed on the front door. The house was a tomb, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, amplifying the suffocating silence. The minute hand crept towards the 7. My pulse throbbed in my ears. 3:06 became 3:07, and right on cue, thud, thud, thud. This time, I didn't move. I just sat there, paralyzed, listening to the silence that followed, a silence that felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to react. The days bled into one another. I stopped answering the phone. I let the mail pile up. The world outside the front doors ceased to exist. My entire reality had shrunk to this living room, teas, armchair, and the nightly vigil I kept. Each night, the knocking seemed to grow more insistent. It was no longer just a sound. It was an entity, a personality. It was her impatience, her frustration, her unwavering will, all condensed into those 4 impacts on the wood. Last night was the worst. The knocking was harder, more forceful than ever before. It wasn't just a knock. It was a series of blows. The glass pane in the upper half of the door rattled violently in its frame. The sound was bone-jarring. Against my better judgment, I found myself crawling across the floor, drawn to the door like a moth to a flame. I pressed my ear against the cold, thick wood, my breath catching in my throat. I was trying to decipher if the sound was coming from outside or from somewhere deeper, somewhere within the grain of the wood itself. And then I felt it. The vibration, it wasn't just a sound wave, it was a physical force that traveled through the solid oak, through my cheekbone, and deep into my skull. It felt desperate, hungry. It felt like a prisoner trying to break out, or break in. I scrambled back, my hands over my ears, but I couldn't block out the phantom echo of it in my head. This evening, the air is different. It's heavier, charged with a static I can feel on my skin. The storm that's been threatening all day has finally broken, and rain is lashing against the windows. I haven't slept, not really, in a week. My mind is a frayed, tangled mess of grief and terror. I'm back in my armchair, the one facing the door. A heavy blanket of dread is draped over my shoulders, colder and heavier than any wool. The clock hand sweeps past 3. My heart is a frantic drum against my ribs, anticipating the familiar, terrible call. 3:07 a.m. Thud. Thud. It's not a knock anymore. It's a punch. The entire doorframe shudders. THUD thud. Closer. It sounds like it's right here, in the room with me. It's less like a request and more like an insistence. A command. A demand for entry, for recognition. I squeeze my eyes shut, screaming internally that it can't be her. Eleanor is gone. I stood there in the pouring rain. I watched them lower the casket into the cold, dark earth. I felt the finality of it, the absolute end. This is just a cruel, macabre echo, a trick of a shattered mind. THUD. The final knock is a deafening blow that makes me jolt, my teeth clattering together. The knocking continues. Relentless, predictable. It's mocking me, using the intimacy of our shared history, our private signals, against my sanity. And then, after the 4th impact, the silence that follows is worse than the sound itself. It hangs in the air, thick and expectant. It waits, knowing I am listening, knowing I am paralyzed on the other side of this door. But tonight, the silence breaks instantly. There's a new sound. A scratch, a horrible, wet sound of something dragging slowly, deliberately, down the varnish of the door. The sound of fingernails on wood, but heavier, wetter. Then, a voice. A low, guttural whisper that seems to seep through the keyhole. A voice that belongs only to the grave, saturated with damp earth and decay. It's right there, just on the other side of the thin barrier of wood that separates us. Arthur, it rasps. A sound like wet leaves being crushed underfoot. You forgot my key. My breath hitches. My body is rigid with a terror so profound it feels like a physical collapse. It is her voice, but twisted, broken, dragged back from a place it should never have left. The knocking starts again, but it's different now. It's faster, frantic, a desperate, furious drumming that's no longer just on the door. It feels like it's coming from the walls, from the floor, from the very foundations of my life. The house is groaning under the assault. She wants in, and the most terrifying part, she knows I'm here. She knows I hear her. And she knows I have to let her in. The loneliness, the all-consuming grief. It's a powerful siren's call. My hand moves seemingly of its own accord. I see it reach for the deadbolt. The metal is cold, so cold, but the familiarity of her presence, even this monstrous version of it, is overpowering the fear. It's a twisted, terrible comfort. I need the silence to end. I need the waiting to be over. My fingers close around the lock. I turn it. The click echoes in the room, a sound of final, irreversible surrender. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content like this. Stay safe out there.